and every story can change the world. Together we are Global Speakers Talk.
Good evening and good morning, depends on where you're tuning in from this morning. I want to ask you a question. Why is it that more and more of us don't feel heard? It's like everybody's speaking, but perhaps nobody's listening. And perhaps that lack of listening is behind some of the biggest problems that our world has today. So here's a question for you. I want you to think of your happiest memory this year. Where were you? Who were you with? Tell me a little bit about that memory. But I'm going to place a bet that in that memory, very few of you were all alone. You know why? Because joy is never a solo emotion. We are a pro-social species. We do better when we are together. That's why the disconnection crisis, the loneliness out there in the world is such a huge problem. And it's why I get up every day to create more empathy everywhere and fill those gaps. As humans, we do better together. But did you know that 52% of the world is lonely? Now, when you understand that loneliness, it's not about being alone. It's a lack of connection. And when you realize that that lack of connection is actually bad for our health, and that according to the Surgeon General, to be chronically lonely is as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, you begin to realize how huge this problem is. Today, 330 million people don't have a single friend. 330 million people. You know how often it is that people come to me and say, you know, Mimi, I have hundreds of friends on social media, but when I'm sick, I have nobody to feed the cat or do my shopping or pick up the medicine at the pharmacy. Because today we're very confused about the difference between being visible and actually being understood. And here's the irony. We have never invested more in our optimization, in our health, in our well-being than now. In fact, every year in the corporate world, we spend $25 billion a year on corporate well-being programs. And yet our teams have never been more disconnected. I call this the social paradox of our times, where we're spending more on our well-being and yet we are less well than ever before. Because today, 870,000 people a year die of loneliness. And 1 in 7 of us have an issue or a complication with mental health. Today, only 29% of us believe that we're thriving, which means that nearly 70% of us think that we're not. And if you look at the most recent Gallup data, which came out only about 3 weeks ago, they'll show you, unfortunately, that workplace engagement has fallen again, similarly for the last 4 years, and it's now sitting at only 20%. So that means that 80% of your team, and close your eyes and think about that for a minute, right? It doesn't matter if your team is 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, but that 70 or 80% of them are actively disengaged in their work. Globally, what we're seeing is that workplaces are replacing things that we used to get from religion, from community, from family in many parts of our world. Things like meaning, belonging, purpose, all terms that you've probably heard in the working world. And yet, we can't find the belonging or the connection in those workplaces. The cost of this is over $10 trillion a year. So I call that the $10 trillion gap. And this $10 trillion is being fueled by a lack of connection, low belonging, disengagement, and presenteeism, being purely present, and that's it, in our workforces. And it's costing us nearly $10 trillion in value, in productivity, because people are turning up to work, doing their job, and going home. But that's all they are doing. There's no innovation or collaboration. They're not using teamwork. They're not connecting. So they're delivering on their job description. You can't fire them, but that's all they are doing. As I said earlier, I call this the social paradox of our times, but it is also the performance paradox of our times. Because fundamentally, if you want people to perform in your teams, in your business, the very foundation of that is understanding them, knowing how to motivate them. How are you going to include people if you don't know what inclusion means to them? How are you going to drive better performance if you don't understand them? Did you know that 89% of your employees say that belonging is critical, not nice, critical to their performance? And yet, only 38% of people believe they have it. So that is a huge gap of over 50% of people saying that they don't belong, even though it is critical for them to be able to perform. So meanwhile, so many of our leaders are focusing on process and speed and optimization, while the underlying fundamentals of being able to perform are missing in the workplace. So here's another question for you. What do you think are the key leadership skills of today? Perhaps think of a word. If you're in YouTube right now, pop them in the comments there. I'll come back to them later. Let me know, what do you think are the most valued leadership skills today? Well, let me tell you something really very interesting, because at Davos last year, the World Economic Forum released some data to show the core skills for 2030. Now, this data was released at Davos. Davos is where world leaders gather every year to look at the most pressing social, economic, and political issues of our time. This data from the World Economic Forum was based on us achieving our optimal economic growth. So this is not data about being nice to people or having happier workplaces, although those things are very important. This is data about economic success, about how we thrive as nations and build our GDP. And what the data showed was that in the top quadrant, so the most important skills for 2030, of course, AI was at the very top, up there, very important. But underneath that were three really interesting learnings. One of them was curiosity. The second was a leader's ability to commit to lifelong learning, to progressing. And the third sat in empathy and listening. Because fundamentally, what the data is showing us is that as the AI world takes hold, as AI runs more and more of our process and our systems and our optimization of the administration of our business, the operations of our business, your point of difference, your competitive edge is your people, is how you understand others. And the key to that is to listen first. So in a world, as I said at the very beginning, where more and more people do not feel heard, where they see so much noise out there, and yet they experience so little connection, being able to connect people in your workplace, in your team, is the number one critical reality for sustaining performance and competing in the marketplace. So what do we know about organizations that have high empathy? Well, we know that they have 21% higher profit. We know that they see 68% higher levels of engagement, 34% higher levels of output, and 51% lower turnover. There is no business data that does not improve when empathy goes up, for obvious reasons. If you understand your people better, not only can you lead them better, but you can improve motivation and drive engagement. In fact, all of our HR metrics are directly proportionally successful when understanding from leadership teams improves. So, what is it? What is empathy? And again, if you're here today on YouTube, drop me a comment in the comments. I will definitely come back to you after this live session Tell me what you think empathy is. The reality is empathy is a skill set. It is a pro-evolutionary skill set. That means that it exists to keep us alive, for our survival as a human race. And today, we have seen a decline in empathy over the last 3 decades at the levels of 48%. So that means that we have lost nearly 50% of a skill set that keeps us alive and, yes, allows you to compete. What is it? It is fundamentally human data, the ability to understand how someone else sees or experiences the same reality as you differently. It allows you to negotiate. In fact, you're going to read about it in the FBI's behavioral change stairway when they're negotiating hostage situations, for example. It allows you to overcome conflict, to build rapport, to create sustained trust. This is the ability to take the perspective of another. There is nothing soft about this skill set. So if you came here tonight thinking that empathy or emotional intelligence was a soft skill, may tonight be the very last time. This is a hard skill set, hard to find, hard to master, and with very hard business results. Like I showed you earlier, right? 21% higher profits, nearly 70% higher levels of engagement. Organizational empathy is simple. It is organizational perspective taking. And you are going to notice now that you've heard me speak that this is trending all around you, from education to technology, from boardrooms to community centers to politics and policy. Because what the world is coming around to is that if we do not understand each other, we cannot fill the gaps that are slowing us down. What we know is that when empathy is low, segregation rises, and a segregated team never wins. This is a skill set that keeps us alive, but it's also a skill set that enables you to compete. And here's the important thing. It's not a concept. I'm not teaching you the 7 steps to better leadership. You can go to Harvard for that, right? Someone will do it better than me. This is not a concept. You know what it is? It's a memory. You were born with this. All of us were born with this. It is built into the prefrontal cortex. It is a pro-evolutionary skill. I want to end with 3 really simple ways for you to start listening first, using your empathy today. The first is to use better eye contact. The eyes are literally the windows to the soul. It is a subconscious sign that you are listening and present. And in a world where we have very little presence and very little authenticity, eye contact will go a really long way. If you struggle with that, try and remember the color of somebody's eyes and see what happens. The second would be to open your body language, to show that you are listening first. And to do that, measure the distance between your shoulders, so shoulder to shoulder and shoulder to ear. Having an open body language, drop your shoulders, roll them back, will create trust and a conducive environment to listening first and understanding people. And the third thing would be to be really good at using open-ended questions. Ask people to explain further. Tell them, I would like to understand that more. Can you help me understand what that means to you? Can you explain to me how you came to this conclusion? Open-ended questions enable you to understand. And if you don't ask, how will you ever know? In the end, our ability to listen first to each other is to build trust, to create teams that work together, collaborate together, and grow together. And you know what? There has never been a time when our world, your workplace, needed more connection than right now. Performance is directly impacted by the levels of connection and communication in your workplace. So as I said, if you came here tonight thinking this is a soft skill, may tonight be the last night, because empathy is the hard skill that perhaps you never knew that you needed. My name is Mimi Nicklin. It has been a great pleasure to deliver this very short talk to you today. Thank you for joining me. And if you'd like to find out more, come and find me anywhere across social media or at empathyeverywhere.co. Thank you for coming, and good night.
Together we are global speakers talk.